My name's Emily, I'm an artist and jewellery maker. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a charity shop haul. If you are unaware, my partner and I will frequent our local charity shops and often pick up some marvellous things. So I thought I'd show you some things I've picked up over the past few months that genuinely fill me with so much joy, both for craftiness and also my other hobbies like reading and things. So let's get on to it. The first thing I picked up was actually a yarn that is so bright you can't actually see just how bright it is on camera. It's more pinky than it comes up on camera, but also in the same haul I picked up a set of crochet hooks that were just literally sitting there on their own needing to be picked up, and they're about I think £2 for this full set. So if you are unaware, I actually like to make crochet hooks with polymer clay handles, so I thought these would be perfect to add to my repertoire of stuff for the business, and I couldn't resist, so I picked those up. And the yarn would be perfect for some other projects like bunting or even a cardigan and stuff. I'm actually currently making a waistcoat, which I'm really enjoying at the minute. I'm about 80% done and it is very much an enjoyable project. The next thing that I picked up was something I've actually had on my Amazon list for a while, and it's a pantograph. A pantograph is used in either technical drawing or graphic design, and it's a device that actually scales up or scales down a drawing to be identical, just either smaller or larger. It's done through parallelogram linkages, and it all is based on the movement of one pen, but it traces the image twice, if that makes sense. So I thought it'd be definitely worth picking up, and for £2, who can resist? It was something that I have been looking into getting at some point for things like portraits or just drawings, just as another kind of mechanism, another string to my bow as it were. And I do find it quite useful when it comes to the repetition of a piece, but making sure it is as identical as possible. And then also the fact that you can scale it up and down is something I thought was very useful. So this way I'm not breaking the bank, but I'm still trying a device out. One thing I definitely can't pass up is unique frames, because not only do I get to frame artwork, for example, but I've also had this idea of actually making relief work with polymer clay and making designs like that, but within a frame. So I saw this and I thought it has its own sort of hook. I love the colour. It's like a sort of glossy, almost cherry red frame with like a golden inner border. I thought it was beautiful. I'm actually working on a few of these projects at the minute with other frames that I've found, and these are just some of the sort of background colours that I've been working on. I kind of masking tape the edges so they don't get covered in paint as well, but I've got a few ideas for these, so whenever I see other frames like this, especially that are ellipse sort of circular shapes, I think they look gorgeous. So I picked this up and I believe it's about 50p. I really want to start sewing. I want to start sewing my own clothes. It's always been something I've been very interested in, and I want to eventually get a sewing machine because it's something that I enjoy making. I like adapting clothes. I love fashion anyway. You'll see in the latter part of this haul that I've picked up some other bits as well. I love quirky fashion. I love making things kind of maximalist and just making things my own. I think it's very healing for my inner child. I was always kind of made fun of for the clothes that I wear and for expressing myself through style and fashion. So now I'm kind of trying to heal that inner child of mine, and if I can adapt and make clothes to do that, I would love to do that. Like this skirt in itself looks really cool, and there's lots of things within that, not only just techniques but also tips and tricks, and also full step-by-step guides on making certain outfits as well. Like a coat, who would have thought I'd ever make a coat, but the option is there. So I thought this would be very useful to have when eventually I go down that route of getting a sewing machine and to make clothes like this. I think it'd be really fun, and I'm just fascinated in like fashion and the way fashion is made. It's something I find very enjoyable to research and look into, and if I can have that added to my repertoire that I can help myself with, even simple things like hemming curtains, but to be able to make my clothes as well would be wonderful. I also adore beads. There's just something about colourful shiny beads. I think it's the magpie in me, and I saw this book, I think it was in like a clearance section with in a big bucket sort of thing, and these books, even without the clearance section, are relatively cheap. So to see this, depending on what shop it was either 33.3p or 50p. So I thought this would be really useful, not only for jewellery techniques, but also for techniques for home decor. I would like to start making more home decor for my Etsy shop, but also for markets when I get back into that market life. I would like to start doing that again. I do miss that, but I've just not been well enough to do that. I've not been able to predictably know if I'd be able to be well enough to do it. But now I have the catheters and stuff, it might make it a little bit more easier for that situation. And I'd love to be able to start adding more skills to my bow, as it were. And beading is something I find it very therapeutic. And this book filled me with so much inspiration, so I thought 50p, can't resist. One form of art I really do enjoy, and I think it's because it has sort of a bit of a nostalgic element to it. I did do it when I started my A-level art, and it's still life. I love the composition aspect. I love things that you can include within that, from like rhythm, reflection, having rounder shapes gives it that sort of movement, but then having things that have more of an opacity give it that glow, including different formats of textures from fruit, things that are kind of more solid or opaque, and then the symbolism aspect of it I do really enjoy. So when I saw this book I was like, well, I'm going to need to have it. There's a lot of still life artists that I haven't necessarily come across for a very long time, which I find very interesting. I love the sort of oil painting aspect of that as well, and then also the darker, more symbolism elements of that I find really interesting. And then there's also like surreal still life as well, which I find really interesting. I love surrealism, so to have, I think, is it a, yes, Giuseppe Arcimboldo is a really interesting surrealist still life artist, and I think he exhibits that sort of quirky element within art that I love, but then including that with still life just definitely tickles that part of my brain that I really enjoy when it comes to researching not only artists but also art movements, and having a book that has everything within that, from the more kind of well-known famous artists and all of these. I think it's just really interesting to have a book all surrounding this. It's like a perfect book for me. But then moving on to making my own still life composition, I really want to do that next year. That is kind of a almost sort of New Year's resolution that I want to do. I want to build a big still life composition and paint it, because there's something about that I just really enjoy. I'm going to take some photos of it so I've got the aspect of kind of knowing exactly where things are and working from a reference photo, because I find that quite comfortable. I find that something that doesn't necessarily hinder me when lights change and whatnot. I really want to apply some of the things that I learned when doing the still life, and also having elements of things that I've learned along the way that could be applied to still life as well. So things like shape, rhythm and reflection. But also I just bought them because I'm absolutely obsessed with mason jars and anything that's kind of like a vessel that could be used to preserve something special. Mason jars with clasps, but also I thought this almost glass teapot thing was just really interesting and really cool, so picked that up. I also found this beautiful plate. I have actually been lucky enough to see Gustav Klimt's The Kiss. I'm not overly sure if I remember seeing this piece, but we went to the Belvedere in Austria when we took my mother to Austria for her 50th. So I thought this was beautiful, thought this was really special. I've also got a problem when it comes to tiny cute little bowls, and thought this would be great to just house some jump rings while I'm doing a project. I've just got a slight obsession with tiny little bowls, mason jars, anything that can be used usefully in jewellery making. This is actually an ashtray, which I think obviously has been given up because smoking is definitely less of a... I think growing up with a heavy smoker in my family definitely put me off that, so I thought instead I'd use it as a brush holder. I could even put a tiny bit of water in it so I can use it to wash brushes, so I can turn that into something a bit more pretty and beautiful. I then also found these lovely little pink crystal sort of trays. I thought they'd be really cute for displaying pieces of jewellery, but also for like photographs for when I display my jewellery for Instagram and stuff. I thought it'd be really, really sweet. And then I saw this pillar, which I don't know. I mean, I love Roman and Greek mythology. I thought it would be very interesting for architecture. And then something that tickled my nostalgia was this bowl. My mother had a set of mugs and things with these little faces on, so when I saw this massive almost cereal bowl, I actually just use it to put some pieces in of jewellery that I'm working on in terms of, or that I've just simply not put away, to be frank. But I thought it was really sweet, and it reminded me of my childhood, so I couldn't resist. A random cute thing that I found, but I thought would definitely inspire me with the relief work that I want to work on, but also just decor wise. I think it's absolutely adorable. I love window scenes. If you can hear gurgling in the background, that would be the radiator that has finally come on. It has been absolutely freezing. I don't do well in the cold, I just can't warm up. So we've set the radiators to come on, well, start to come on now, and that is just what's happening. I think it's now officially time to welcome winter. So that's what that sound is. Anyway, what was I talking about? The cat decor, yes, I thought it was very cute. Picked that up as a bit of a display piece for the art studio. And then I saw this. Now I want to actually start doing some upcycling, so I thought this would be a perfect task to do. It's like a little jewellery box. Some of them have a lot of felt in them. This cost £1.10 and this didn't have felt in it, so I actually want to start maybe painting it, making it quite quirky. I might probably replace that knob to something a bit more sort of decorative, and I just really want to start doing things like this and then maybe sell them on markets or have them as like one-off pieces on the shop, so I thought that was really sweet. And then because, like I said, I have an obsession with frames, I found this one. It's baby pink. I thought the image itself was quite cute that I'll probably end up using for journaling. It was 50p. If not used in the art studio, I could maybe use that for a decoration elsewhere, or even painting the frame a different colour and using it as like an upcycled piece. I'm not too sure, but I thought it was quite sweet, and 50p, you really can't complain. Like I said, books are my absolute weakness, especially when it comes to quirkier interests of mine, like words. I'm really interested in words that haven't necessarily been used for a very long time. I love like vocabulary and semantics. I think it's so interesting. And the more sort of eclectic my vocabulary becomes, I just think it's really interesting to develop. I especially love poetry and things to have words like this that could be perhaps more of a unique way of expressing one's definition of a certain word. But it's definitely something that I want to use more of, and especially when I'm writing poetry. I'm also really into these 2-sentence stories. There's like a thing on Reddit where people just write 2 sentences to make a story, and I'm really interested in that, so hopefully this also might help that. I also am very interested in folklore and superstitions, and to have one all based on the British Isles is definitely interesting. Certain things like numbers, or this itching one, my mother always says that if you have a left or a right itchy hand, it depends on whether you're going to be giving or receiving money. Same with feet, if you're going to travel. It's something that we use a lot of. My grandmother is very, very superstitious, so there's a lot of things like that that definitely tap into my nostalgic beliefs as well from when I was younger. I also find that there's aspects within this book that are also more kind of like based on numbers, like the time 1111 or the angel number 444, but I definitely also have a morbid curiosity in sort of the occult. That's just something I've been generally interested in and fascinated in. I'm not necessarily one who encourages or believes the sort of demonology aspects of that, but it is just something I'm generally quite fascinated in. I love paranormal investigations, the afterlife, that sort of thing is very fascinating to me. So to have this sort of aspect within this book, all of my interests are in one book, from the more kind of welcoming and lovely aspects to also maybe the not so lovely aspects. But there's also goats, and goats are my favourite animal, so this aspect of goats within this book was a sign. I just had to have it. I've realised I've been very lucky with the books that I've picked up recently. Not only have they either been very cheap, there's a charity shop that we do go to that's 4 pieces of media for £1, which means it's like 25p each, and there's also a book that has like 3 for £1, which is like 33.3p each. My partner's a maths teacher, he's the one that told me that. I have no knowledge of maths at all, but one thing I have got knowledge in and that I'm very interested in is Earth, ecosystems, anything geographic is something that I'm very interested in. I used to want to be a weather person because weather absolutely fascinates me. So imagine my absolute delight when later, when reading this book, I found that there's also a massive section on weather, atmosphere and tectonic activity in plates. So I was thrilled to say the least. I also love that there's these gemstones and more like the geology aspects of the life from like the Earth's crust. And then as I go further on, you see things like rivers, the amount of times I've had to do meanders and oxbow lakes and all that when I did geography. Oh my goodness. I definitely enjoy learning that now at my own pace, but having to do things like standard deviation and things like that with geography definitely took the fun of geography out of it. So it's quite nice that I get to kind of do my more personal research at my own pace as and when I feel like it, rather than being forced upon learning terrifying things like formulation and statistics. Who would have thought that would be part of geography? But I do like these little fact files. I think they're quite sweet. I'm very interested in that sort of aspect of statistics when it comes to the geography side of things. But when it comes to working out formulations of probability, I could really do without it, to be honest. Numbers absolutely terrify me, but things that do interest me, the atmosphere and things like that. So having this within that book really did tickle my fancy. I love clouds. I absolutely am obsessed with things more like the violent side of weather, like tornadoes, and like how supercells develop to become from just a normal cumulonimbus cloud to then develop into something quite catastrophic, and that really does interest me. It's quite a dark interest, but I just think it's fascinating how something so natural can be so destructive and yet so beautiful and terrifying at the same time. I think tornadoes are just incredibly fascinating. Before I became disabled, I did want to go down the route of going to a storm chasing experience. Now, because of my cardiac history, I don't think I'd be allowed to, but there was once a time I dreamt to be in one of those cars chasing a tornado. So that's a random fact about me that you now know. Also, tectonic plates, very interesting. So this book I literally feel was made for me. Back onto something more lighter and creative. I saw this book again in one of those bargain buckets, and it's the Illuminated Alphabets, and it did spark a creative project that I've really wanted to do for a while. First thing is the start of fairy tales that I had in my childhood, always had these gorgeous letters. So I was thinking about having some initial jewellery at some point and thought, well, why not combine the two? I also think these landscapes are beautiful, that's by the by. These floral pieces were what really inspired me to start making some jewellery that kind of had that sort of fairy tale once upon a time aspect. So I've started making these. They aren't on the shop yet, but they're definitely inspired by the sort of fairy tale first letter of each story, normally an O once upon a time, but that's by the by. I thought these would be quite sweet. They all have different flowers, from irises to daisies, daffodils, pansies, bluebells, and each letter will have either a gold or a silver option, and they have the flowers can be picked as well. I've just done some examples so people know what the flowers are to be available. So say, for example, you wanted a C with, I don't know, a sunflower, that can be arranged in gold or silver. But it's definitely a longer process, but this is something I've definitely been working on and I'm excited to release. When I became disabled and unwell and started to have some intolerances to certain foods, I definitely lost my confidence in cooking. I then found that my intolerance is more like quite rich proteins from like meat and things. I can have fish, but I prefer more of the plant-based options like corn or even things like tofu I really, really enjoy. So I've been trying to kind of tiptoe back into cooking. While I enjoy it, I do find it quite difficult. Standing up for a long period of time is something I really struggle with. So I want to start doing things that I can kind of develop over a few days and make a really nice home-cooked meal. Not only to fuel my body with goodness, but also because I do really enjoy it and I miss being able to do it. And also it's just interesting to me, the like flavours and combinations, and I find it really does satisfy that part of like creativity within me. But also I really love food, I love flavours, so having that as like a bit of an outlet and being able to make something nice for my partner who isn't vegetarian, but then make something vegetarian within that as well. I can kind of adapt it to our specific likes. So I want to kind of accumulate a repertoire of certain dishes that I can make, that as I become more familiar with the dish, it becomes easier, and either I can prepare it or there's elements that my partner can help me with, so we actually have some really nice meals and maybe even batch cook it and freeze some things. But it's just definitely a big confidence issue with that. I am still waiting to get things like a perching stool, so it means I'm not necessarily standing up for too long and getting dizzy and faint when cooking, but that is also massively delayed in the UK. I've also recently found a couple other books. That was literally yesterday when we went to a recent trip. They aren't being included because I filmed this book about a week ago and I am already voiceovering this, and there would just be an endless supply because we go to charity shops quite frequently. So that is the cookbook that we picked up, and definitely feel like I can adapt this. There's not too many ingredients, and the ingredients that you buy you can use for other recipes. I don't like it when there's lots and lots of ingredients because financially that isn't possible to buy every individual spice in the world. One thing I also absolutely love is reading and books and collecting books, so I have been very much enjoying perusing the bookshelves in the charity shops to find more reading material. I get through books quite quickly, so to have them for like 50p or under is definitely very beneficial, because spending £7 or £8 on a book that I'm only going to last a couple of days isn't really feasible financially. But this book I've seen all over TikTok and, well, BookTok and Bookstagram, and it's supposed to be quite an entertaining, almost feminist sleuth type book, so I'm interested in having that. I saw this book, I've not heard a lot about it, but then when I saw that Rachel Joyce said it was glorious and Richard Osman rated it highly, I trust their opinions, so I thought it was quite a sweet aspect of that. I've heard that it's quite enchanting of a book and might be a little bit of a tearjerker, which I'm always fond of in terms of books. And also the colours of this cover was really beautiful. I definitely think it's one of those books that can sit proudly on your shelf and look the part and look very beautiful. If you haven't guessed, I love things really weird and wonderful, so to see a book called Ketchup Clouds, well, my interest was piqued, so I thought I'd pick this up. I think the concept of this is a little bit more of a like what's going on, trying to find what's happened and whether the person actually finds out or whether we find out or if it's a dual narrative. I'm not too sure. I don't know much about the concept of this book, but you know, Ketchup Clouds, very interesting as a concept to me. And I think anything a bit weird and quirky. I know this author also wrote a book that has also become highly recommended. I think it's something to do with a fish. Silence is Goldfish, I believe, is the book. And that definitely is something that interested me. So I want to see more from this author. I read an Ava Reid book that I wasn't overly fussed with. It was Juniper and Thorn. But I did like elements of the writing. I just found some of the bits were a bit not to my liking. I thought there were some kind of themes that were honed on a bit too kind of much. It made it seem a bit naive, but this is definitely something I'm interested in. I believe it's the debut of Ava Reid, so I'm intrigued because I know I've heard a lot about her as an author that's very positive. She's recently also written a book about Lady Macbeth, which I'm also interested in. So I'm just trying to develop my kind of understanding of who she is as an author and how I can kind of add that into my desire in the fiction world and what I like from her as well. So another author I've heard nothing but good things of is V. Schwab, and I have a couple of her books on my Kindle, but not this one. And this is a special one because there's like a decorative edge. I think it's beautiful, and anything witchy is definitely my cup of tea. And also it says the natural successor of Diana Wynne Jones, and if you're unaware, she wrote the Howl's Moving Castle storyline, so very much interested in that. So one of my guilty pleasures is any fiction to do with being a twin. I am an identical twin, so when there's a book involving twins, I'm interested to see how accurate it is in terms of the twins' relationship. I think there's a lot of kind of speculation on how twins are. There are definitely some quirks about being a twin that I think are very reminiscent in certain books, but I think there's some things that are kind of glamorized that I'm interested to see whether certain books are more accurate with being a twin. And it's just a general fascination. Multiple births run in my family, so I'm definitely intrigued on how the relationships develop between the sisters. There's one thing that's definitely very apparent with being a twin is the bond, and I think I'm interested to see how that is conveyed within this book. One author I personally rate very highly and I really enjoy is Matt Haig. This is The Radleys, which I think is a bit like a family novel, and it's like a dysfunctional family novel, which I'm definitely very interested in. Matt Haig has definitely got an interest in sort of the quirks of life and writing that within his novels. And there's definitely some more darker undertones in certain novels of his, and he definitely writes about mental health in a very kind of candid and honest way. So I'm interested to see how that is written within this book. Also, the front cover of this specific rendition of The Radleys I loved. I love house illustrations, so definitely interested in that, and I'm really pleased I found this book. Again, 50p, I really just couldn't not. One thing I was actually unaware of was Dear Evan Hansen had a novel. I know this from the musical, so to see the novel, and well, I was just absolutely thrilled that I found it, and again, for such a small price. I love the musical, it's very heartfelt, so maybe read into this further and have something that's definitely got more kind of substance. Not saying that the musical hasn't, but I have never seen the musical live. I've only listened to the soundtrack, but I can kind of gather what goes on. And from what my sister has said, who's a massive musical buff, I thought seeing the book itself would hopefully gain me a larger understanding of the musical, and I just can't resist. I think it's a very much loved and iconic storyline. The next two books are definitely not my comfort genre. They're definitely a genre I tend to struggle more with, but I'm trying to kind of tiptoe back into it. It's more of a historical type novel, but these two have more darker undertones, a bit more like trying to solve something. that may be found to have a darker tone to it, and I'm going to leave it at that because I have heard some amazing things about this book, and also jars, what can I say, I have an obsession. And then this book is more of a gothic type novel. It has poison as a theme, which again, a darker undertone, something I'm definitely more interested in when it comes to historical fiction, so it's a great way to tiptoe back into that theme, but about something I find more generally interesting. Fashion time. I found this t-shirt. If you aren't aware, I adore 80s films. Gremlins is actually my favourite film in the whole world, so when I saw this Back to the Future t-shirt, I'm probably just going to wear it for bed. It's super soft, it's quite worn and old, but for the softness alone, I just had to have it, and with a pair of comfy pyjama bottoms, it'll be perfect. I picked up a really cute cotton pleated skirt. I think this is from Marks and Spencer's. I think it cost a couple of pounds, and I think, imagine this, it's like a berry colour with a pair of mustard tights and some little woolen leg warmers and a cosy coat and maybe a big fur hat. I think it would look very sweet. And then because of that whole ensemble being in my head, when I saw a similar skirt but in a royal blue colour, I was then thinking I could develop that aesthetic into a primary school teacher with primary colours as a theme. And I can actually show you the look because I wore it yesterday and I have a photo, and I felt very much like I was living my art teacher dream. I think the maximalist trend and just dressing for your inner child is very healing for me, so I just try to wear things that make me feel very happy, and that's all that matters. Another Marks and Spencer's find, I think this was £2 as well, and it's a super sparkly top, but it's not rough or coarse on the inside, it's still very soft, so I thought this would be perfect for Christmas parties or even Christmas itself. It's nice and stretchy, would go with a lot, and even as an under sort of layer top to wear something over the top would be really sweet. I then found the dream for those in wheelchairs, an elasticated pair of joggers, but leather, like pleather, so it still looks like it's quite a almost formal and quite trendy bottom to wear, but still really, really comfy. I find when I am in the wheelchair, I need elasticated waist because having something digging into me is very uncomfortable, and having that sort of mobility within the wheelchair is very useful. I'm actually going to test these out tomorrow when I'm in the wheelchair because we're going somewhere and taking my mother somewhere special, which I will not reveal in case she watches this video. It is a surprise, but if you're interested in finding out where that is, my Instagram is linked below. Shameless plug. I then found this really cute, almost laser cut, like edged top. I'm going to wear this almost like a sweater vest and then something underneath, but I thought it was really sweet. I love the colour. It's like a blurple periwinkle lilac dream, and I think the little flower edge is so sweet. I am all for a scalloped edge as well. I just cannot resist anything that's either ruffled or scalloped. I just think it's adorable. And then finally I found a pinafore of dreams. I found a pinafore recently that does have straps that tend to fall down a bit more, so I thought of one that I would like eventually to try and search for, and then miraculously found the exact one that I'd seen on Vinted a while ago that was deemed perfect in my opinion in a charity shop for like £4. So that had to happen. It's a really soft denim, really lightly coloured, very pretty, and that is the end of my haul of charity shop goodies. I know it was a long one, quite rambly. I've not been in the best sort of mental health space recently, but it's been really nice to actually go through some things from nice memories that I've picked up recently. I think I've had some difficult times over the past few weeks, and I think because I tend to have a delayed reaction, my mental health has been a struggle, so I've been quite lethargic, quite triggered and anxious, so within that I've struggled a lot with kind of coping with some simpler tasks because the harder tasks I've had to use all my energy for. It's just been a lot. Like I said, that's the end of this video. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this video or like me, please do subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you here and join me in all of my arty endeavours. The next couple of videos will be staggered a bit more just while my mental health is a bit hit and miss. I find when I'm super motivated, I do lots, and then I tend to crash afterwards. So in between that, I do work as and when, and sometimes there's lots of work, sometimes there's not a lot. So I really don't know how to predict this. I'm just taking it at my own pace and being very gentle and kind to myself. So I hope you understand that as well. I know you do, you all are fantastic, and I do thank you for your continued support. There's been lots of likes and favourites of my Etsy shop, and I just want to thank you so much because I can see that that is coming from YouTube, and I am so, so grateful. If there is anything you want to purchase for Christmas presents for your loved ones or even yourself, who am I to judge? We all love a little treat. They are all linked below, Etsy, Instagram, so do check that out if you're interested. But I'm going to go and make myself some lunch because my stomach is rumbling. I hope you haven't heard that during the last couple of minutes of this video. It is loud. I'm going to make some toasted English muffins before my stomach gets even louder. So thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you have a truly magical rest of your day. Please stay safe out there and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!